Hello and welcome to the Yarning Over the Days podcast. I'm Constance and I want to welcome any new viewers and also any returning viewers for today's episode. This is a podcast all about my knitting, sewing, and crochet life and the adventures that I have with my crafts. And so I hope you enjoy. And also you can find me on Ravelry as Cleo, cleocmc, and also on Instagram as Cleo, cleocmc. And I also have a blog where I keep show notes at yarningoverthedays.wordpress.com. So I'm not sure. I feel like this may be a really long episode. So I'm just going to go ahead and get started. And I have notes here so I don't forget anything, which I am sometimes prone to do during episodes. Okay. So we're going to start off with the finished objects as usual, and then we'll move into the works in progress, the acquired treasures. There's no archive treasure today. And then I'm going to end with I had a few questions that I want to answer and address, and also just a little bit of general chatter about my life and whatnot and what's going on. So without further ado, let's get started. Okay, as you can see, featured right next to me is my moonlit shawl, and it's finished. Sarabi's hair, sorry. And this is a design by Sandra Paul of Cherry Heart, and I just think it turned out absolutely beautiful. I finished it maybe a little more than a week ago, and I finished it and I took it home because I knew that we were going to the Shakespeare Festival, and I was thinking about taking it with me for the cold building, but I ended up not taking it. I just wore a cardigan. And so let me take it off, and we'll talk a little bit more. And the mannequin I'll talk about in the acquired treasures. But this is a crescent-shaped shawl. Of course, I can't get it all in the camera. But it's a crescent-shaped shawl, and it's crochet. And I used Knit Picks palette and fingering. Well, palette is fingering. But I used Knit Picks palette in cream. That's the color. And I used 2 skeins. Now, when it comes to shawls and scarves, I typically never check gauge. I just start crocheting, and maybe I should have checked gauge because when I came near the end, I had this little bit left of the edging. I completely ran out of yarn. And I was like, oh my goodness, what am I going to do? Should I just omit that section? What should I do? And I wasn't going to order another skein for such a tiny section. And I was working with the crochet E-hook, E-size hook that was suggested in the pattern. And I just went with the designer's suggestion. I didn't check gauge. Was a bad person. Well, not a bad person, but a bad crocheter at the moment. I didn't feel like it. So I got to the end and I ran out of the yarn. And so I was thinking, oh my goodness, what am I going to do? So I went to my stash here, and it's not much. And I was like, I don't even think I have anything. But then I found some Deborah Norville sock yarn that I used just a few months ago for a pair of peacoat socks in cream. And so I thought it matched pretty nicely. And so it was a bit thinner than the Knit Picks palette, but I went ahead and joined it on the end to finish out that little edging there. And it worked out perfectly. And honestly, I have no idea which end has well, it's probably this end if I'm guessing the way I was working. But yeah, this would be the end that the Deborah Norville yarn came in, and you can't tell the difference at all. So I tried it. It turned out nice after blocking. I wet blocked it. I just soaked it for 15 minutes using Kristen Amdahl's Rapture product, and this is how I typically like to wear it. Now, I love it, and let me show you a close-up of the details of the edging, which was my favorite part of this. And it goes all the way around the edging, and the middle, as you can see, is pretty simple. So I do love it, and I like it a lot. But when I took it home during my trip, My mom saw it and she just fell in love with it. And she asked for it and I was like, okay. I'll tell her that I would do an episode just to show you all the finished shawl, but she liked it so much, and so I told her that she could have it. She loves crochet lace, and she especially loves it in the cream color. And so I knew that she would like it, but I didn't know she would like it that so much. And even when I was taking it home, she was like, "Aren't you leaving that? Isn't that for me?" And I was like, "Yes, it's for you. I just wanted to do a podcast episode of it." And I'm going to see them again next week, and I'm going to give it back to her. So I gave it away to my mom, or I'm giving it away. And it's funny because I was thinking about using this pattern for the Christmas gifts, but it looks like she's just going to get an early Christmas present. But I still need a shawl for myself. So I ordered some Knit Picks palette again in the color Mist, which is this really light gray. It's really light, but it's really nice. And it looks almost near the white tone because it's so light, but I like it a lot. And so I'll make that for myself as a replacement. But this could be a quick pattern when you're, and Sarabi's playing with toys if you hear any noise in the background. If you just sit down and work on it, I think that you can finish it pretty quickly. But I worked on it off and on because there was no rush with the project. And so that's that. Everything went according to plan. It was written out really lovely. Oh, and I will say that when it got to this part, I love that Sandra included a chart because I was not, yes, I could read the pattern, but I just feel like the chart made it so much simpler. I could just look at the chart and go back and forth. So I looked at the chart for the lace edging, and that was really nice. I love that addition to the pattern. So that's that finished object. Okay, and now I have a few sewing things to share, a few sewing finished objects. And I'm going to get started because I think I want to talk a bit about Quick Sew. I think it's 4138. I showed this pattern to you all a few episodes back. I think it was about 2 episodes back, and I was saying that I wanted to make this version. And my father, he bought me some denim fabric when I went home for a visit. And so he bought me the denim fabric from Joann's, and I was looking at the fabric, and I knew that I wanted to make I call this a pinafore dress. Is that what it's called? Pinafore dress? Dungaree dress? I'll just call it dungaree dress for this episode. But I knew I wanted to make a dungaree dress, and really it's funny because, okay, so I'm going to talk a little bit about this dress. The reason I wanted this dress was, first of all, I already have this black dungaree dress from ModCloth, like I said before, if you saw that episode. And I was saying that I wear a lot, and it's really a versatile staple wardrobe piece, which is true because I could wear a lot of shirts under it. So I then started seeing a lot of Tilly and the Buttons dungaree dress pattern on Instagram and a lot of other places on Pinterest, and I absolutely love that version. Like, I liked it a lot, and I don't know, I was just like, then I saw this pattern on Pinterest, and they had it was so funny because they had this image right next to the ModCloth image of the dress, pinafore dress that I have. And I was like, and they were like, make your own, instead of buying. It was a Pinterest or a pin. And I was like, oh. And so I looked for the pattern, and I went to McCall's website, and I bought it. And they were having a sale. I think it may have been like $1.99. And I was like, oh, that's even a better deal than the dungaree dress from Tilly and the Buttons, the Cleo dress, even though I really, really like the Cleo dress. Now, and I said, oh, this should be really simple. And I do regret not just going ahead and getting the Cleo dress. See, the Cleo dress is not flared out, and I absolutely love flared out dresses, skirts, whatever. And so that's what made me flock to this. And also what made me flock to this version was that they paired it right next to the pinafore dress that I already had from ModCloth. So I was like, oh yeah, it's very similar, and I can make my own version. Now, did I enjoy making this pattern. No, not at all. And it's not. Okay, let me just talk about it. I don't want to talk about the pattern or say it's their problem, but I'll tell you about the problems I encountered with it. First of all, and this is my fault, not maybe, but the denim I purchased is so heavy. Like, I've used denim before for my Holly Burn skirts, but all of those denims, I don't know if that's a word, but all of those fabrics, they were kind of a medium weight denim. But for some reason I was like, oh, I want to go with the classic denim, and I saw that it was heavy, but I still picked it out at Joann's and I bought it. It was so cumbersome working with this heavy fabric. And here's the dress. And before I go into talking about it, I will say I like the finished object quite a bit, but I'm just talking about the process. So working with the denim, it was really, really heavy. And I did change out my needle on my sewing machine. I bought some needles from Joann's to use for heavyweight fabric because I knew that this would be heavyweight fabric. And then also once I put the interfacing and the straps, and there's interfacing here, I knew that it would get really, thick. And then also lining it also, I just knew that it would be really thick. So working with it, that part, I didn't like how heavy it was. And then, I'm just looking at my notes here. The strap, now I'm going to take it off the hanger. The straps, I do think I followed the pattern correctly, and I even looked at it again this morning to see if I messed up somewhere. But obviously my straps were on the wrong placement. So I thought everything was going well, and I was trying on the dress as I was making it. But then, of course, you don't really know how things are going to be until it's actually completely finished. So when it's completely finished, then let me see if I can kind of show it to you. Then, the strap should be smooth, like I fixed it here. But they were like sloping down and out in such an ugly way. It wasn't smooth across my back. And I noticed that I think that the strap should have been reversed. Like, I may have placed them in the wrong section. And I was like, oh my goodness, what am I going to do? And by that time, I was kind of exhausted because this was also after I did the buttonholes and everything. Everything was done except for the hemming. And I was like, okay, I'm just going to put this on the mannequin and I'll get to it later. And like I said, this project exhausted me. And then I ended up taking a nap because I was just like, oh my goodness. And so when I took a nap and I woke up, then I didn't feel like looking at it. I mean, I hung it on the mannequin and I was just like, I'll look at it tomorrow. And I started knitting on my Vivian sweater. And then while I'm knitting, your mind thinks about things. Then I started thinking about, well, what if I kind of sew the straps down into place? And let me see if I can show it. And I was going to do it the next day, but it was on my mind and I was thinking about it. So I figured, why not? See, now it's lying flat, and you probably can see. But what I did was I tucked the straps in, and I actually hand sewed. You can see that little part that was drooping out. And I sewed it like from here to here, and also I came around, and you can't see it probably, but I sewed it there. And it gave it a nice smooth effect, and I was so happy about that. So I tried it on again, and the back looked just lovely. It was perfect. But let's talk about this back section here. So the pattern was really difficult in trying to think about what size to go with. Should I do extra small or small? And I didn't know. And these patterns, they may say this is your body measurement, but as you know, you kind of have to, I don't know. That's why a lot of people suggest doing muslins or going with I took Lady Bird's advice. What I typically do with patterns is I take the measurement size on the tissue paper and I use that instead of the measurements that are on the back. However, this pattern did not have the measurement sizes on the tissue paper. They weren't on the back. And so, on the paper. So I was kind of like, oh, what should I do? So what I did was, how did I do this? I measured the waist piece, and then I accounted for, I took off the 5/8 of an inch seam allowance that you typically do with sewing. And then from there, I figured I needed to do it extra small. However, the garment was still pretty. I had a lot of positive ease in the waist, quite a bit. And so, let me see. The button was supposed to go here, and this was how it's supposed to go. But it was still a bit of positive ease, maybe about 2 inches. And my waist is 24 inches, and according to the back of the pattern, the waist for the extra small would be 22.5 to 23.5 inches. But my waist is 24, so you would think that, oh, well, then I should have had a good fit. But it wasn't a good fit. So what I did was I just added another button. And I left that button because sometimes I do like my waist to be fitted. But like I said, if I'm going about running, I'm going to eat a big meal. You know how it is. And you might not want to be as cinched up. Then I left the button in case I wanted to loosen it up a bit. So I added another button to make it more snug in my waist. But then this part was like flapping ugly in an ugly way. Excuse me. And so I added some hook and eye closures to close that in. Let me just show it to you, button up. And it made it, and then that made it kind of lie flat against that portion, and then the button hole was nice. And from there I liked it quite a bit. I'm just looking at the inside of my garment and seeing where I could have done some things a bit neater, but it's okay. And then I'll talk about why I really wanted to try out this pattern. Also, I remember saying a few episodes back that I wanted to try out this pattern because I wanted to try out buttonholes. And I had never done a garment with buttonholes, and maybe it wasn't really wise or smart of me to go with my first time doing buttonholes to go with such a heavyweight fabric. But I was reading my Tilly and the Buttons book, Love at First Stitch, and also I was looking at a Fruity Knitting podcast a few weeks ago, and Andrea was even talking about when you do buttonholes, make sure you test it on the same fabric that you're going to do the buttonholes on the garment with. So I had scraps of the denim, and I folded it over, and I practiced my buttonholes with my buttonhole function, and oh, it went perfectly. It was nice. It's just, it went without a breeze, and I was so excited. I was like, oh my goodness, this is great. This is perfect. So I was ready to do my buttonholes after practicing, and I don't have my practice swatch with me in front of me, but it's in my sewing area. But after practicing and the buttonholes came out perfect, I was like, okay, I'm ready to start putting the buttonholes on. This pattern has 3 buttonholes. You have the 2 in the front and the 1 in the back. So I got started, and I did the 2 in the front, and everything was going so lovely and so nice. And they turned out nicely. So I was like, huh, I got this. Why did I build this up? No biggie. Okay. Then I got to the back waistband section. And man, did I have so many problems. I think the fabric may be really much thicker in this back section here, you see? Like, especially this part here. And my machine was having a really, really hard time going over that buttonhole section. It kept like jamming and stopping. And you can see my mistake section here. At the bottom, you kind of can see that line. That's where I messed up. All right, I'll show it. There. So I tried it about 3 more times, and the machine kept going, like, just wouldn't do it. It would go a little bit distance with the buttonhole, and then just stop, and then it was just doing something wonky. So after about the 3rd time, I said, Okay, Constance, the definition of insanity is doing the same thing over and over and expecting different results. So let's say I have to do something different. So what I did was I ignored the placement of the buttonholes that was according to the pattern, and I moved it back a bit. And that worked out a bit better, but still the buttonhole didn't. It was shorter. Yeah, okay, the machine was just acting crazy. How can I describe this? You put the buttonhole in, and it does the length according to the buttonhole, but the machine was acting up, or the fabric was too thick for it, and so it made a shorter length for the button that I intended to use, because I intended to use the same button that I used here in the front, but since it made it a shorter length, I was like, I'm not going to fight with this anymore. And so I said, I'm sure I could find some buttons that are smaller, have a smaller diameter in my stash, and it won't matter because it'll be in the back. And I did find those, just basic blue buttons. So, okay, I did not think I was going to be talking about this dress so much, but I just want to cover everything in case anyone wants to think about using this pattern. And someone even asked me on Instagram when I was sharing my story while I was making it. She asked, did you run into any problems with that? And I was like, this pattern. And I was like, oh no, all I have to do is the buttonholes and the hem. But by that point, I didn't really, I didn't try on the dress like with the full 360. And so I just like tried it on in the mirror, and I didn't see the issues with the straps in the back. And at that point, I didn't put the buttonholes in. I had just pinned it. So, and really, my issues with the buttonholes, I don't want to say that that's the pattern, because it's not. That's my fabric choice probably, and my machine, it just can't handle all of that. And so, okay, let's get back to this back buttonhole. So, it was a shorter buttonhole, so I just replaced the buttons with the smaller buttons in the back. But still, the machine didn't do that it didn't seal in that opening as much, I guess because it was just dealing with issues. So then I went on the internet and I Googled how to hand stitch the buttonhole, because I wanted to hand stitch over where the machine didn't do, because that opening was becoming very frayed and I didn't want that. And so I went and I hand stitched over this section here to give it, a look. It's messy, and I still hate looking at that mistake line from the buttonhole that went wrong. But I said, Constance, you need to get over it. I slept on it, and I said, when it's all said and done, when it's buttoned, you can't tell a difference. I just know. And so I would just know I was frustrated with it. But when I think about the finished garment, I am so pleased with it. I'm so happy that I went with the classic denim, because I don't think I'll be revisiting this pattern anytime soon. And so I went with the classic color, and so I know I'll get a lot of wear out of it. Because let's say I had went with a floral corduroy or something, then I wouldn't have gotten as much wear out of it, and I don't know if I would have had as many trials with it, and I would have still not wanted to revisit the pattern. And also the quick sew patterns, this is my first time working with the quick sew pattern, and I was looking at different threads and groups, and people on the internet were saying that quick sew patterns run large. That's why I was concerned about the sizing, and I didn't know what to do. And I will say that obviously it did run large for me, because I went with the extra small and it was still pretty large in my waist area. But other than that, I am so pleased with this finished garment. The process was not that enjoyable, and also having to fix those mistakes and those little issues I had, that took up quite a bit of time, but it's done, and I'm happy that it's done. And I will insert a picture of the finished dungaree dress here. Okay, so that's it. That's all I think I have to say Let me check my notes about the pinafore dress. Yes. So after I finished that, and actually I think I finished this before I did the dress, I wanted to try out a peasant blouse. And it's funny because Andy, hold on one second, I want to get the pattern envelope. So, Andy of Untangling Knots some years ago, she created this peasant blouse. And her version was lovely. It was in this like crisp white linen, and she trimmed it with a red rack. And I always liked it. But then when I saw the actual pattern, I wasn't impressed at all with the images on the front, and I didn't like it. Nothing about the images on this pattern would have made me pick it up. But that's why I love Instagram and social media, and because Andy has a nice style, and it's a style that I really like and flock to. Full skirts, vintage, retro feel. And so when she was wearing this blouse throughout May with her full skirts and even with the pencil skirt, and she also worked with shorts. Then I saw how versatile the piece was and that it had a vintage look to it. And I was even watching this old video on YouTube. It was about I don't know the name of it, but it was set in the 50s, and this woman was working with, it was a simplicity video, and it was talking about how to create the know-how look. It was so adorable. It was just everything that, the 50s was about. And so it's kind of corny, but I loved it. But I say all that to say that when I was looking at that old video, then she was wearing a peasant blouse with the red skirt, the lady in the video who's working with the simplicity patterns. And I liked it a lot. And I thought the look was very similar to Andy's version. So then I went to Joann's, and they had a $1.99 sale for patterns. And I was like, you know what, I'm going to try this out. And so as I was saying, I was surprised by how little fabric was needed for this pattern. Like, the version I wanted to make was version D without that elastic under the bust section. And that version only needed 1 yard. And I was like, wow. And I knew I had more than 1 yard of fabric left over from my dress that I showed you all in the last episode, so I went about making it. Very easy pattern, very simple. And I was thinking, I would have loved to have discovered this pattern when I first, started sewing. And so, because it's just perfect, like, it's nice, and it looks great tucked into skirts, and it looks great with skinny jeans. However, it doesn't like use any bust darts or anything. And yes, you put the sleeves in, but it's not like setting in sleeves in the typical manner. So it came together really nicely, and besides omitting that elastic under the bust, I kept everything exactly the same. And I even kept this little curved edge here at the bottom, which I'm not that big of a fan of. I don't know. I don't like curved edges. And so, but overall, I was really pleased with how quickly this blouse worked up. I think I finished it. I know I finished it in a night. I'm not sure how many hours. I'm not the fastest sewer. I'm sure that more experienced sewers could probably finish this in an hour, but I know I didn't finish mine in an hour. But I will insert a picture of the blouse here. So after that, I knew that I wanted to create some more because I liked the blouse a lot. I liked how it looked with a lot of my garments and pants and skirts. And so I set about making another version. And I bought this fabric from Joann's, and I had 1 yard of it. Now this, see, I had a little more than a yard for the other version. But with this version, I had to like place the pattern pieces in a different layout than what was suggested for the pattern to make sure that I had enough fabric for the to create the blouse. And also I took off an inch of the hem this time around, and I made the hem a bit narrower, so it's still the same length as the previous blouse. And then I squared the edgings because I didn't like that rounded edge, and I squared the edgings, which I like a lot. Of course, I prefer this version over the other version because it's green. It's my favorite color to wear, and it has that square bottom, and it just looks really nice, and it looks really nice with my Agatha cardigan, and it looks nice even on its own. So, and it matches a lot of things in my closet, so I just like this version a lot. I would have liked to I again did the version D without the elastic under the bottom, but I wanted to do version C with this, and I wanted to add ruffle, but I didn't have enough fabric. Like, I was just making it with the amount of fabric that I had, and so I had to just do the version that required the least amount of fabric. But I still really, really, really like this top. So I was on a roll with the Peasant blouses, and I wanted to create another, and so I'm wearing the other version. I had this fabric here in my stash. It was this red fabric, and I knew I wanted to make a solid version of the Peasant blouse. And this, I keep calling it a Peasant blouse, but this is actually Butterick B4685. But I wanted to make the version C with those ruffles around the front and back, which I really just love. I think it's really just girly and nice and feminine. And so I had this fabric in my stash for years, like since my early days of sewing. I have no idea what kind of fabric this is. I know it's not cotton because I had to set it on a lower iron setting, and it just it just didn't behave like cotton, and everything was sticking to it. So it may be polyester because I, like, you know, little threads that you have in your sewing area, everything was sticking to it, and I kept having to pull it off. But it's funny because now that I'm wearing it, okay, well, something is on it. I was about to say nothing stuck to it, but it's still, I like it a lot. And I'm happy that I was able to use some fabric that was sitting in my stash for years, like probably about 3 to 4 years. And so I had more than enough to do the ruffle edge, and I didn't shorten the hem by an inch this time, but I still went with the square hem with that split. All of them have that split there in the middle. And again, this pattern has no shaping. Well, it has a little curve that when you cut it out on the side, but everything, the shape I guess you get is from the elastic. And you also put the elastic in the sleeves too. So it was really easy, really simple. If anyone wants to get into sewing and they want to make a blouse that's quick and easy, I think that this is perfect. I just regret not buying it sooner. And I guess I needed to be coerced into buying this by looking at Andy's images. And hers images are the only images. It's not many images of this pattern on Instagram, and so I don't think I would have ever bought it if I didn't see her version. And I'm so happy that I did. And other than that, I don't have anything else to say. I do have plans to make another in white, and I'll talk about it in the work when we get into works in progress, which we are in this section right now. So in works in progress, I did work on my Vivian sweater, but I didn't work on it at all when I went home. And I remember telling you all in the previous episode that I planned on working on it when I went home, and I just knew that I was going to finish the front section. But when we went home, well, I was watching my nieces, and I love watching them, and we were having such a great time, and that wasn't the project to work on while I was with them when we were looking at movies. And so what I mainly worked on were my clover socks, but even that, I couldn't concentrate on it as much when I was getting into the the heel portion and also the decreasing of that portion. And so trying to like count in my head and talk with them and watch them, even that was a bit difficult. So I didn't get much done, but I did work on it some, and I'm very, very close to finishing the front section. As you can see, I just have to finish out this last purple section here, and then I need to just do the ribbing on the front edging, and it will be I'll be finished with the front, and I already did the back section. So I'm still pleased with the progress that I've made on it, and maybe I'll get more time to work on it this upcoming week, because my contract ended with my previous job, and I was telling you all that I will be starting a new job, and the new job starts on August 15th. So I have a bit of a break. I have like a week break this week. Yes, like a sort of vacation. So I'm going to have me a craft vacation, and so maybe I'll get a lot done. I plan to wake up early in the morning just like I would going on a regular day of work, and I plan to craft quite a bit this week. And I still have class on Monday night, and I have an assignment to do, but still I would have those hours that I would typically be at work to craft. So I'm excited about that. And there's not much else to say, but I just wanted to show you my progress on the Vivian sweater. And also, as I mentioned, I worked on my clover socks a bit, and I am now in is this the instep portion? Yes. And it's a nice pattern to work on just in the meantime. Again, this pattern is from the book Socktacular, which is from the Knit Picks design team. And I don't have anything else to say about it. This is still the first sock. And I will say that I'm at that stage where I could try the sock on. And remember, I was telling you all that I wanted to try out making socks with a 100% wool yarn just to see how it would wear and how it would feel. And I'm using the Knit Picks palette, and the color is Cotton Candy. And the socks do not feel as nice at all. Of course, I expected that. As my other socks that I've created, you know, what did I make the other socks in? I made socks with the Bora Norville's yarn, and also Knit Picks hand painted, and also Knit Picks Strolling. Those feel really nice. This feels like wow. I'm sure I'll wear it, but it's not like. And I'm curious to see how the fabric turns with blocking and also with wear. Because I used Knit Picks palette for this, and once I blocked it, it became quite nice and drapey, and I really like it. So we'll see. But I'm pleased with my progress on the clover socks. And I'm also, as I mentioned earlier, I'm working on another Peasant blouse, and this time I'm creating a white blouse. Let me try to, I hope my camera can capture this. I think it is. This is not plain white, as you can see, because I just have a hard time going with just a plain solid color, and I'm so proud of myself for doing a plain solid color with this red Peasant blouse, because it's now I know I'll get a lot of wear. So I wanted to make a white version, and I wanted to make another version with the ruffle, just to go with that whole classic look of the Peasant blouses. And I already cut out the pieces, as you can see, and I've even marked them already. So it just needs to be sewn. I'm not sure if I'm going to get on it tonight. If I have, we'll see how that goes with the editing process of the video, or if I'll get started on it tomorrow morning. And I'm thinking that I want to add some rickrack around this section of the white blouse. And so, of course, I have a lot of rickrack that's just been sitting in my stash, and I'm really trying to use up things that's just been sitting around. And this was in my sewing bag, and I like that color. Of course, I like that color. I mean, it's green, and I was thinking that would just look really nice trimmed on that Peasant blouse. So I think leaning more and more towards trimming it. And I was like going back and forth, because I was thinking, oh, it would be nice to have just a completely white top, and the green may limit what I can wear it with. But then I was like, well, I have a lot of, not a lot, but I have a few other pieces. I have a cream fabric in my stash, and if I just wanted to go with a solid kind of whitish creamish color, I'll just use that. But I want to add the rickrack more and more. I'm looking at it, and I think it'll be a nice addition to the blouse. So that's my sewing work in progress right now. Okay, I'm trying to move along because, as I stated, I have some questions, and I want to get to your questions and talk about those things. But we will get into the acquired treasures. As you know, I created a Miette skirt, and I talk about Tilly and the Buttons. I'm a fan of Tilly and the Buttons. I say a pretty nice, big fan. I love going to her Instagram page, her Instagram stories. I always read her blog, even old blog posts, because it's really helpful, and she has a lot of useful tips and tutorials and things, and I just really enjoy it. Oh, her Pinterest page is really inspiring also. So I love Tilly and the Buttons, and so they are having a summer sale right now, which ends tonight. And with the summer sale, first I purchased the Bettine dress a week before the summer sale. And I purchased this. And the reason I purchased this was because I was in the fabric section back home when we were at home with my mom, and then my pastor's wife, she happened to be there. We didn't plan on running into each other, of course. And she was in the fabric section, and she was wearing this nice, easy cotton dress. And she was talking about how she just likes to have some dresses that she could just throw on when she needs to just quickly leave the house or run errands, and weekend dresses. And while I typically do wear my fit and flare dresses, I could wear them on the weekends. I might wear them with tennis shoes or flats. I was like, oh, that would be nice to just have a nice, easy garment that I can just have like a stash of. For example, I'll say like during May, when those Saturdays come and I don't really feel like dressing up, but I still need to go handle things like walk Sarabi outside and maybe go pick up some things from the grocery store, but I don't have any major plans for the day. And I wanted to have an easy dress for those types of days. And I saw the Bettine dress, and I thought that this would be the perfect dress for that. And so I purchased this pattern, and I'm excited about it. It looks like it's going to be really easy to make. Doesn't have any zippers, no buttons, just elastic and fabric, and so that's really, really nice. And so I'm excited about making that. Then I was still, on Tilly's page or blog, I don't know, on her Pinterest. And for years, I always liked Tilly's book, and I love the designs in it, but I put off purchasing it from its release date. What was that, about 3 years ago? Because I don't relish the thought of tracing patterns at all. For example, I even have Gertie's vintage casual book, and I've had that book for 3 years. I one day started tracing out a pattern on medical paper, and I was just like, I don't feel like doing this, and I just didn't even finish. And so that's why, and that book I like a lot also, but I just don't feel like tracing out patterns. And that's probably why I don't really flock to digital patterns or anything where I would have to, I don't know, I just like printed patterns because it's just easy. I just cut out my sides and I can just get started sewing. But I say all that to say that I would like Tilly's book, and I thought the designs were absolutely beautiful and lovely, but I didn't feel like tracing out patterns. But then so many people kept creating beautiful things from the books. Some of my favorite bloggers and also friends, Instagram friends. And I was like, Constance, you need to stop being so ridiculous and just hop on the bandwagon. And I mean, look at that. The designs in this book are just beautiful. But I also wanted the book because I like Tilly's advice for creating a handmade wardrobe, and I like how she knows her aesthetic, she knows her style, and she sticks to it, and she has a completely handmade wardrobe. And it's funny because I was never planning on going with a handmade wardrobe. However, more and more I'm starting to see that as I create more, that I just mainly want to wear the things that I've made. I hardly ever pick up things that I haven't made, and I always flock to the things that I've made. So I was like, am I creating a handmade wardrobe. And so it looked like I started doing that unconsciously, or in my subconscious, I was creating one. And so I decided that I needed a book to kind of, this book is great advice on honing in on your style and wearing handmade clothes and dressing handmade, so in your handmade. So I just wanted the book, and I'm excited that I purchased it and that I got it, especially since Tilly has a second book coming out in 2018, and I felt pretty horrible that she had the second book coming out and I didn't get the first book yet, and I was like, I need to really get on that. And so I'm happy I purchased it. And also, so those are my acquired treasures. They're Tilly and the Button patterns. And I will say that I took advantage of the summer sale, and I ordered the Cocoa dress because I want to challenge myself to work with knit fabric. And I also ordered the Cleo dungaree dress because after all of my trials with the quick sew pattern, and I didn't enjoy the quick sew pattern, and I was really wanting something that a lot of other people have proven to have success with. And so I ordered the Cleo dungaree dress, and I'm really excited about that coming. And hopefully that dungaree dress will be my go-to, because I like to use the same patterns over and over again, and I don't want to revisit that quick sew pattern anytime soon. And so I hope that the Tilly pattern will replace the dungaree void in my pattern stash. Okay, and also when I went home, we did do a bit of fabric shopping right before we went to the Mary Poppins show. Then we even stopped at Joann's, but this fabric came from Walmart that I'm going to show you. My sister, she purchased me some cotton fabric, 2.5 yards of this. I think it's really beautiful, and I think that the description of the fabric was called Flowers and Herbs, and I like it a lot. And so that was nice of her. And then I also purchased this for myself, and I got 4 yards of it because I want to create another Butterick 6453. That's the Gertie pattern, and this time I want to make the full skirt version. Last time I made the fitted version, and I thought this was the perfect kind of fabric for that vintage retro feel. So those are my fabric acquisitions. And finally, I purchased 2 more skeins of Knit Picks palette for another moonlit shawl, because this shawl now belongs to my mother. I needed to purchase another for myself, and I went with a neutral that I love to wear, and that's gray. And as I was saying, it's a really light gray. As you can see, kind of tend towards white, but I think it's perfect and I like it a lot. So I'll be getting started on that soon, because I still need a shawl for cold buildings to cover up my chest. Now, in this portion, I did have some questions, and I thank you all for the questions. I don't mind answering them at all. So if you ever have any questions, feel free to leave them in the comment section or contact me on Instagram or Ravelry, and I will make sure to try to answer them. So Eva from The Charm of It, she asked, how did you build up your knitting skills? She asked, did I start with difficult or super simple projects? And how did I overcome challenges like princess seams? And this kind of also coincided with the question that Aiden also had. And Aiden is known as the Knitting Monk on Instagram. And he also has a great blog, which you should check out, theknittingmonk.wordpress.com. He asked, how did you get into sewing? And that was his first question. And so I'll get started into that. How did I get into sewing? I knew that I wanted to sew one day, and I always kind of mentioned it in passing. And then my sister Allison gifted me with a sewing machine about 4 years ago. Yeah, I think it was about 4 years ago. and it was a brother sewing machine. And I don't have the model in front of me right now. I'll put it in the show notes. Hopefully, I will remember to put it in the show notes. And it is a pretty nice sewing machine. Like, it wasn't just basic. It has quite a few stitch options and things like that. And when she gifted it to me, I even asked her for advice on how to use it. And she was just like, I don't know. And so I had to read the manual, of course, and it just seemed overwhelming in the beginning. So the sewing machine sat for some months in my apartment, and I was like, no, I need to get on this, and I really want to use this sewing machine, so where should I start? So the first thing, I remember watching my nieces one Saturday that weekend, and I was like, I'm going to do this. And so I sat down, I read the manual, and I had some scraps of little pieces of quilting fabric, because I was buying little square pieces just when I was in the store, because they were like 90 something cents. And I figured that I would just practice piecing those little pieces together. And so my niece Aaliyah, to this day, she loves joking, because she's like, oh, do you remember when you first started and you were sewing so slowly? Because I didn't know what to do. And the first thing I made was a pot holder. And I got it from this book. If I'm not mistaken, the book, I tried to look for the book when I went back to my parents' home to bring it here, but it was called Sewing in a Straight Line by Brett Barra. She used to be the editor for Crochet Today magazine, which is no longer in publication. And she also used to be a host on the Knit Show. I think it was called the Knit Show, or the Knitting and Crochet Show. And so she had this book called Sewing in a Straight Line, and I tried to make a pot holder from it. And sewing the pieces of the pot holder together, it was just squares. And it was good practice, because I was practicing sewing just in a straight line. But when it came to actually putting the backing on the pot holder, and you know how quilting is, I don't do much quilting at all, but they kind of put that solid big piece of fabric over the fabric, and I don't know what it's called, but when it came to that part, I didn't do a good job. And needless to say, the pot holder was pretty hideous. And yeah, my niece Aaliyah thought it was pretty I was pretty pleased with my machine stitches. They were straight, they were nice, but my hand stitching was horrible. And so I still hung up the pot holder, and I was using it in the kitchen because I created something, I wanted to use it, but I hated it. And when it came to moving, I just threw it away, because I just hated looking at it, and it was just like, ugh. But that was my first project. I remember vividly sitting down one Saturday, and my niece was sitting right next to me, and she was with me while I was trying to learn. So then I wanted to try something else with straight pieces and straight lines. And so I had this mini quilt book, and it was like sewing mini quilts. And it's still at my parents' house. I didn't bring it back with me because I don't plan on using it, and I didn't want it to just clutter up my apartment. But this was the little mini quilt that I created from the book. And I still like this a lot. And it's not perfect at all, but it's much better than that pot holder. And I even embellished it with an owl, a felt owl in the front. And again, these were little pieces of fabric that I just had in my stash. And it's funny because look, that's that fabric from the dress that I created in the previous episode, in that peasant blouse that I just showed you. So I didn't know I had that fabric for that long. And so I created a mini quilt, and I like it a lot. What's the purpose of a mini quilt? I have no idea. I just like to drape it over something, just to add a pop of color in a room. Again, when it came to putting that back piece over this, it's not perfect, and I just winged it, and I just stitched all around. And I don't even know what kind of stitch that is. I just winged it. So I was happy with that. And then I was thinking that if I wanted to sew, I didn't really want to do quilts. Not right now, maybe one day in my life. I wanted to do garments. See, the quilts and the pot holders, they were just projects to help me to get to know my sewing machine. And so after I did those projects, then I felt pretty comfortable with doing a straight stitch on my machine. and I wanted to get into garment sewing. And the first thing I looked for was sewing an elastic skirt. And I found a simple tutorial on Pinterest, and I made this green elastic skirt. And if you check out my blog, if you want to go in the archives, then I even talked about it. I was pretty proud of that skirt. It was unlined, it was simple, it was basic, but it was the first wearable garment that I made. And so I was really happy with it. And I actually wore it for some years. And from there, I even made a yellow elastic skirt. And then I made a yellow elastic skirt, and I even underlined it with a gray like fabric. I didn't know it's called underlining at the time. I just wanted a skirt that would not stick to my tights. And so, yeah, I was feeling all right about those projects. So I was like, I don't want to go through my sewing garments making only elastic skirts just because they're easy. I wanted to follow a pattern. So that was the next hump that I took. And to build up my sewing skills, I was thinking I needed to start with the sewing pattern. And so I had this pattern in my stash that I purchased from the thrift store, and it was like these night shirts. And it was a Butterick Fast and Easy pattern, and I have no idea what the pattern number was called. But I just wanted to, I'll put it in the show notes hopefully I will remember. But I wanted to create one of those tops. Now, I was trying to follow a sewing pattern, and I never, of course, done anything like this before. I didn't even look at any YouTube videos or anything. I just went with it. I got off work one day, and I was like, I'm going to do this. And so I didn't know about pinning the pieces to the fabric. I didn't know about notches or markings on the fabric. I didn't know anything. I just like cut out the pieces and cut out the fabric. I remember having a hard time even pinning the pieces to the fabric. Like I would lift up the entire fabric and then pin under. It was so odd. See, I should have looked at a video or YouTube video, because later on I even looked at, I think it probably was that old Simplicity video, and she was just pinning her pieces so easily. And so I just winged it, and I made this top here. And it's not actually that horrible. When I went home, I found it in the old back room, and I'm happy I didn't throw it away, because looking at it, I'm like, I actually lined the bodice, had a lining. But I remember vividly this section here, I didn't mark anything on the fabric, so I just put the sleeves where I thought they should go, which was just crazy. And I didn't know much about gathers, and it looks like I tried to do some type of gather, but my seams, like this seam is back here, and that seam is all the way up there. It's about an inch apart, so the seams didn't match up. But again, I was so proud of myself for working with this garment. But I knew it wasn't perfect, and I didn't really wear it except for on the weekend, just to wear it since I made it. And I definitely don't wear it anymore. But I took a long break after that from sewing. I was just like, I don't know, maybe I need to take a class or something. And then the outfit came along, the first outfit along. And Lauren of ladybird.com said that she would walk us through every step of the dressmaking process. And I was like, I don't know if I could tackle a dress. I don't know. But I followed her instructions, like I followed them to a T. I printed off every single blog post she had on creating a dress. The dress was Simplicity 1803. And she, like, for example, Eva said, how did I overcome the challenge of princess seams? That dress had princess seams. And Lauren of Ladybird, I'll just say Lauren, she had a great method for matching up princess seams that I still use to this day. She said, first you pin the outer sections, and then you ease that little middle section into the fullness. And then you, of course, you sew. And then she even said, like, your present foot would guide things. And I used it, and I followed her instructions to the T. I remember having them printed out, and I was reading it that night, and I did exactly. And when I, like, opened up my bodice, it was like, oh, I was like, oh my goodness, my princess things are perfect. Like, that was pretty amazing. And then she even had great instructions for creating darts that I still use to this day. Like she just stop at the end of the dart at the point and tie the double knot like some patterns. This pattern would suggest. She suggested that you pivot the dart and then go back. And so I did that, and the darts lie flat. I don't have that bulge, and to this day I still use those methods. So really, it was Lauren's online blog tutorial of Simplicity 1803 that got me over the hump of reading patterns. See, she even had sections on how to read patterns. And remember, I was telling you I didn't know anything about markings and notches, and she made it so simple. Like, just put the pen through the dot and mark it. I can't go through every detail because it was so great. It should have been in book format because of how she broke it down. And she even gave simple suggestions for cutting out the notches, just clipping it with the scissors. Everything was just perfect. And my first dress came out beautiful. I was so shocked. I was so shocked that I created another dress immediately after, because it's like I didn't want to lose my mojo or what I had learned from her blog tutorials. So it was that outfit alone that helped me and got me into dressmaking and reading patterns. So that's how I built up my sewing skills. And then ever asked, how did I just do the garments fit me right out of the packet? Now that was and still is a difficult part of sewing for me. And it's crazy because, of course, I could alleviate all of that by creating a muslin, but I don't want to create a muslin. And maybe I would entertain the thought of creating a wearable muslin one day, because I'm of that mindset that if I'm sewing, I want it to be something that I'm going to wear. Maybe I would create a muslin for a garment that I felt was really important, maybe a wedding dress or something like that. Then I would definitely see the need for it. But typically, I follow Lady Bird's advice again, Lauren. She was suggested looking at the measurements on the pattern pieces to choose your size. And I remember I thought that was so helpful because I ended up making a size 4 of that pattern, the Simplicity 1803. But if I had just went by the measurements on the back of the pattern, then I would have been making like a size 8. So as you can see, like it's, but typically I go with the garment. Once I choose the measurements based on what's printed on the pattern piece, then I'll just cut it. I don't really make adjustments except for, with Simplicity 2444, I went with the size 4, and I remember not looking at the measurements, but I figured it's Simplicity. I made a size 4 before. This size 4 should fit just like the 1803, but it didn't, and it ran really small. And so with that, and I've created that dress about 4 times now. I took note of what I needed to do. So whenever I create it now, I do let out the side seams, and also, I let out the darts a little bit, not much, and also the pleats. And so I guess that was a case of where I learned the hard way, because I created the dress and it wouldn't zip, and I was frustrated with it. And I was thinking about throwing it in a pile in a dump somewhere. That's why I love Instagram. Instagram community of knitters and sewers, they're so supportive. So I remember posting on Instagram years ago about my trial with that dress. And so many people were encouraging. And also on my blog, and some people said maybe you could put a contrasting band on the side. Or maybe you could, just a lot of good advice. So what I did was, that night I came home and I just unpicked all of the seams of the dress. And I just resewed it by letting out the seams, and then it fit perfectly, and it's still a dress that I love to this day. It's my plaid Simplicity 2444, and I took note of what changes I made. So I guess you could say that dress was a type of muslin. And then I look at my notes from those changes I make whenever I create that pattern now. And so that was a case where it did not fit me right out of the packet, and I did make adjustments. Okay, and my tips, Aiden asked, what are my tips for beginning sewers? And also Ashley asked me, what tools do I use for sewing and knitting projects? And I'm going to probably talk about both of these, but I'll say tips for beginning sewers. Now this is difficult for me because I still feel as if I'm learning in the sewing process. I know that I'm still learning, and I'm still learning new things. And I would say find a good resource book, first of all, or a blog that really gives details on sewing tips. In my early sewing days, I bought this book called Sewing Basics, and I talked about sewing in a straight line. And those books were all right, but I still don't think that they were the best, so I don't want to recommend them. I wish I would have had Tilly's book when I was starting early in my sewing days. And also, I hear a lot of great things about Gertie Hirsch's books. If you wanted to get into garment sewing for tips, but Tilly, when I read her books, I've been reading it this week. I've even learned quite a bit already. For example, with my, I would typically just hem my dress immediately that day when I got to that point. But Tilly suggested letting the dress hang for 24 hours and then hemming it so that the drape could get set in, or I think that's how she described it. And I did that with the dungaree dress. I put it on the mannequin and I let it hang for 24 hours and then I hemmed it the next day. And maybe it's just in my mind, but I do feel like that skirt on that dress falls much better than any skirt that I've ever had. And I used Tilly's advice for testing out the buttonholes. And so I would say find a good resource, but I don't have the perfect resource besides Tilly's book. But again, that book is limited because it's a lot of feminine designs, and so I'm not sure if that would be the best book for you, Aiden. But I just know that she has great tips and she's very useful, and her blog is wonderful because she has quite a few helpful posts. So that would be my first tip. And also, as you can see, I've talked about learning from a blog how to sew. And I even plan on, I want to take one of Tilly's workshops because I want to learn how to make a collared shirt with buttons, because that's just such a necessary piece. And if I'm going to make a handmade wardrobe, I need to know how to make that. And so I want to take her workshop, and she has workshops on her website on how to create a collared shirt. And I want to take that workshop, and I will do it. I think I may do it over Christmas break if I have like 2 to 3 weeks over Christmas break for myself this upcoming year. And so that it's always nice to just have someone there to guide you. But if you know someone who sews, oh my goodness, that would be perfect. I don't have anyone who sews. My mother sewed, she said, a bit in college, but when I was learning, I didn't have anyone around me really who knew how to sew a lot. But then my church members, the ladies started having sewing sessions on Saturdays, and I learned a lot there, but that was a lot of hand sewing. But I still needed to learn that because I wasn't the best, and I'm still not the best hand sewer. And you use a lot, hand sewing is involved a lot with sewing, whether it's hand basting stitches or slip stitching. And so in those sessions I learned a lot. And so if you know someone or just to get advice, then maybe that would be a tip. And then also, if you don't know anyone, just start in a straight line like I did. Try to just get 2 pieces or 2 blocks together and just get to know your machine and start sewing. And then with each project or with each level, try to challenge yourself more. For example, I used the dungaree dress to challenge myself to make buttonholes. And I would give myself, if I was grading myself, maybe a B+, because 2 of the buttonholes turned out beautiful and 1 was a disaster. But I would have never gotten over that hump or learned about it if I just didn't do it. And I feel that really it may have been the fabric choice. And so I want to challenge myself to make a shirt with buttonholes to see if that would go simpler or be a smoother process. So just take it a step at a time and try to maybe write out what things you want to do and kind of check it off. And I'm big on lists and tasks and to-dos. And so I do that, and so that may help also. And Ashley asked, what tools do I use for sewing? I have a very small stash of tools, but you do need tools for sewing because I stay in a studio apartment. It's not very large, have limited space, and I couldn't bring a lot of things. There are some things I still want to add to my sewing tools stash. For example, I mentioned wanting a serger one day, and more as I sew more and more and I look at the inside of my garments, I really wish I had a serger or an overlocker. And I've been looking at different sergers and overlockers on Amazon and putting them in my wish list. But I don't know if I need it right now because, like I said, I have limited space, and adding another machine to my small studio apartment, I just don't want that clutter, and I just don't know if now is the right time for it. And so that's just an example of I don't have all of the tools. But I'll talk about the tools that I have now. Of course, this is not everything that you would need, but this works for me. And if you just wanted to have an idea of what you would need just to create dresses or garments in a small space with just a sewing machine, then I can tell you what I use. First off, I have a cutting mat. I used to have an actual foam cutting mat, but it's at my parents' house, and I didn't bring it to school with me, but I still want a cutting mat. So I bought this basic cutting mat for $5 from Walmart, and they just have them at your local craft stores. But I like these because I lay out my pattern pieces and it keeps things neater. And not only that, is it keeps my fabric free of any debris or threads or anything that may be on the carpet. And so I just like it. And also I like the lines because it helps me to keep the fabric straight and with the grain line and making sure that I am cutting things the right way. And so I like this because it was easy to find, and I like that it folds up because my cutting board that is at my parents' house that my dad bought me is rather large, but it's definitely a much nicer quality because with that I could use my rotary cutters and cut out the patterns. But now I just use scissors to cut out the fabric, and I'll talk about that. So of course you need a basic scissors are a must, and I've had these scissors for a while now, Fiskars scissors, and they still cut wonderfully. I haven't like sharpened the edges or anything, but a general rule of thumb that you always hear and everyone will tell you is only use your sewing scissors for fabric, and I've stuck to that rule, and maybe that's why they've been going for strong for about 3 years, and I really like them. Because I don't have a serger to finish my seams, I use pinking shears, and those are, I don't know if you can see, like there are little zigzag stitches to finish the seams, and this is a must for me since I don't have that serger. Okay, I'm just trying to quickly go through. Of course you need pens, obviously. I like the little colorful pens because then I can see them. I'm always nervous that I will drop a pen on the floor, and I would just feel horrible if Sarabi was to swallow a pen by mistake or anything. So the colorful pens are useful for helping me to see them. But I also need to get a magnetic pen holder, which is like really at the top of my to-do list because then I could just sweep the floor with it. And I read this on a previous blog. I think it was Tilly's blog, and also she mentioned it in her book. And I think that that's a need for me, especially since I have a pet running around, and I don't want her to get hurt by swallowing a pen or anything like that. In sewing, you use there's a lot of hand sewing involved, so you do need some hand needles. Also thread. And it's some things that I just buy every time I go to the craft store. You know how you buy tissue, toilet paper, certain things you just buy all the time because you know you're going to need it. That's how I treat thread. And I always, this is the thread I typically use, the Coats and Clark's all-purpose thread. And I always buy that. I especially like those really big spools that could last forever because I've made about 4 dresses this summer, and I just ran out of the big spool of thread, the white thread, and I use that for the dresses and everything. So those last a long time. Also, you need marking tools for your pattern if you wanted to get into using patterns. And also, even if you don't get into it, maybe you might want to mark your fabric if you're self-drafting. And I have quite a few different ones. I like the chalk for dark fabrics in which the marker will not show up. I also just like these blue markers because all you have to do is put the water on it after you're finished and it'll disappear. And this purple marker is pretty cool because it's disappearing ink, and after 72 hours it disappears. But one thing I don't like about that is sometimes I have a tendency to cut pattern pieces and I may not get to it for even a year, like a dress I did one time, and of course, if the markings disappear after 72 hours, then I would need to remark the fabric once I'm ready to visit it again. And this was just another erasable fabric markers. Again, these are things that I kind of stay on the lookout for when I'm in the fabric store. And this tool here is a hemming ruler, I think it's called. I'm not sure, but I use it a lot because you will find that you need it when doing your hems, and they always talk about that 5/8 of an inch seam allowance, and it just helps things to stay clear. And I used it a lot, and I really just need to wear it around my neck because when I'm sewing, I'm constantly going back and forth between the sewing section and the cutting section. Even though it's a studio apartment, I'm like going back and forth, and I would always misplace this, and I'm like searching everywhere for it, but I really, really like it. And of course you need a seam ripper. I like this seam ripper because it's so bright and I don't lose it, because I have another that I actually prefer, but it's quite small and I lose it a lot. But also, because you're doing hand sewing a lot, you need a thimble. I mean, you need one. And I like the metal thimbles. I have this plastic thimble, but it doesn't stay on my finger as securely as this. And also this metal thimble is so useful. For example, when I was working with that denim from my dungaree dress, I had to push that needle through that tough fabric. This worked out perfectly. So again, this is a useful tool, one that also I misplaced. I wish maybe there is someone out there who's created a thimble that's on a necklace or something, because it rolls and then I'm constantly searching for it. So those are the basic sewing tools, and I'm not sure if I've covered everything. And of course you'll need a sewing machine. And I think that a nice basic sewing machine can be found depending on what you want to do. I see them all the time, of course, in Joann's and in Amazon. I was looking at just some different ones, even though I don't plan on purchasing a sewing machine anytime soon because mine is going strong. And also Walmart has some at really great prices. So sewing uses a lot of tools, and as you can see, I still don't have every tool. Like a tailor's ham, I would love that one day. Oh, and even, for example, I don't even have like a full ironing board because, again, I stay in a small space, and so I have this like ironing mat, but it works for my space. Knitting tools is pretty easy to talk about knitting tools because you don't need a lot to knit. Of course, you're going to need yarn. I wish in the beginning someone would have told me about quality yarn. I bought quite a bit of Red Heart Super Saver yarn in the beginning, and no, I didn't like it. So if you wanted to get into, I think a nice yarn to buy would be Cascade 220 if you wanted a good price to get started. And also the Cascade 220 Superwash is pretty good. And also Barocco has pretty nice yarn at a nice price. And also with knitting, the one thing is needles. There are all types of needles. You have straight needles, and I have a straight needle set that was a gift from my baby sister, and this is the Knit Picks straight needle set. But of course I've also included, like, with knitting you're always buying different needle sizes that you don't have, and so like as you can see I have like some wooden clover needles. I think these were Knitter's Pride. Yeah, these were Knitter's Pride needles. And I have some clover needles, just of different sizes that didn't come in the Knit Pick set. I also think interchangeable needles are a must because I do quite a bit of garment knitting, and I need needles in different sizes. So it's a matter of preference for what type you like. I have the Knit Picks wooden needle set. And I also have the nickel plated set. I prefer the nickel plated set over the wooden set. And my favorite knitting set is the Addy Click, which I adore because, first of all, the packaging is pretty amazing, right? And also I like this interchangeable knitting set because they have 16-inch cord. And the Knit Picks needle sets only have 24-inch and 32-inch. And I won't go into detail, but these, I will say that, I'll probably save that for another video. But these feel really nice, and they're just the best. They're my favorite. And so, yeah, you're going to find, even with knitting, that there are all types of needles. And I love that Ravelry has that section where you can remember what needles you need or that you have in your stash. And I actually need to update mine because I just purchased some more circular needles in a smaller size to do some Alistar Moore designs. Also, double pointed needles are a must. Again, and Knit Picks is wonderful for having sets. I prefer, of course, the nickel plated. As you can see, those are my favorite. And I do have the woodens, which I've used a few times. And when I first started knitting, I, of course, bought those typical aluminum needles from Walmart or Hobby Lobby. And I do not like these kind of needles at all, but they serve the purpose for getting me started, and they can be found everywhere. Now I typically use them for turning out waistbands and things and sewing and making sharp corners and poking things through. But yeah, and they also look cute as a decoration in my little vase of knitting needles. And also you need a knitting gauge, because gauge is important. And I like this gauge because it has the little, with knitting needles, like double pointed needles, for some, they don't always have the sizes, and so you could just put the needle in there to figure out what size you need. And finally, I have my little Notions case, and it's also my crochet hook case. And this is what I carry in my knitting bag. And you need stitch markers, of course, and a tapestry needle for weaving in those ends. I use, of course, that's a must. A stitch counter, I have that, or a row counter. A pair of scissors and a ruler. I mean, a measuring tape, because I, of course, will measure my garment throughout the process. Again, knitting, the tools are pretty basic to get started, and those are the tools that I use quite a bit. As you can see, I'm still building up my knitting needle collection, and because you'll find that when you get to a certain project, you may not have the knitting needles. But the interchangeable sets, as I was saying, I think the knitting needle sets are great for when I, for example, want to do a garment, because I typically know that they're going to use the needle size that I need to use, and then I could go up or down as needed to get gauge. So I think that those are my main tools for knitting. Oh, and also you're going to do garment knitting, or not even garment knitting, even shawls or anything, and it needs to be blocked. Then you may want to get a blocking mat, or some people I know will block on towels, and as I've stated, I block on a yoga mat before. So you could some type of something to block on, and you'll need T-pins, which I don't have in front of me, but if you want to pin your garments when you block, and you don't have to, that's just my preferred method, then you could purchase T-pins to pin those that garment into place, or whatever item you're knitting into place. Okay, so I think that this did turn out to be quite a lengthy episode, because I did have a lot to cover, and I still think it should be all right, because I did want to cover all of those things. And I just wanted to have a little bit of general chatter. I did go home for my mother's birthday, and we went and saw Mary Poppins at the Alabama Shakespeare Festival. And it was just absolutely wonderful. She really enjoyed herself, and she just couldn't stop talking about it. She even posted on her Facebook that one of the things she took away from the show was that with the cares of life, we must not forget what is important, what is most important, and that is God and family. And she just liked that quote. She put that up the next day, and she was posting all of her images of the program, and also just the memorabilia from the showing. And so she really enjoyed it, and also just the ambiance in the room, because Mary Poppins has the best music, the most wonderful and just uplifting, and it just lightens my heart, and it takes me back not only to when I first saw Mary Poppins, but even now, because I still think that Mary Poppins is so relevant to, because the adults, they were letting the cares of their life just take them away from the joys of the life. And my favorite song from Mary Poppins, my sister asked me this, and it's always been "Let's Go Fly a Kite," because I love the end of the movie when the father he's just so strict and just so austere. But then in the end, when they sing "Let's Go Fly a Kite" and he goes and I don't know, something about that song I just love. When I hear it, I literally want to run outside and fly a kite. Like, even thinking about it, it's going through my head right now, and I'm just like, oh, I just want to go outside and I just want to fly a kite. And maybe will do that. Maybe I'll purchase me a kite and I'll go to the park. It's literally right next to my apartment complex, and I'll fly a kite before the summer is over. But that's my favorite song. And of course, Supercalifragilisticexpialidocious is a great number everyone loves. And when they were singing it at the very end, then the entire audience, we all stood up and we were just all clapping and singing, and it was just wonderful. It was great. My mom and dad, they were even involved, and she just loved it. I loved it. It was beautiful. And then even before the showing, we arrived a bit early, because when we typically go to the Shakespeare Festival, we would go in the winter, and it's we like to go to see A Christmas Carol. And of course, in the winter with daylight saving time, then it's darker, and we don't typically walk the grounds, and it's really cold, so we would just bundle up and go straight inside. But this time it was daylight outside, and my sister was like, let's get there early so we can walk the grounds. And it was just wonderful. We walked the grounds, and there were people also out there walking, their pets and their dogs, and they have a lot of ducks out there. One guy, he was feeding his ducks, and my parents and sisters, they was talking with him, and it was just other people. And that's one thing I also like about the festival. It's just a good social setting, because of course before the showing you have a lot of people who show up, and you're wandering and talking, and it's just like a lot of, you can have an opportunity for a lot of chit chat, and you meet people. And even met this one family. Oh, they were so friendly. They were excited about me going to school, at the University of South Carolina. And they were like, go Cox. And I was like, yes. And they introduced me to their grandson. And he's in school in Germany in his graduate program, which is amazing. I've always wanted to study abroad for a program, which would be amazing. But it was just meeting people and the ambiance and everything. It was such a beautiful, lovely day. Even the weather was beautiful. Like right before when we left, we saw that there were going to be scattered showers. But the scattered showers came while we were having dinner right before the play. So while we were inside, and we took her to our favorite restaurant, which is the Cracker Barrel. It's a southern thing. We love it. And so while we were at the Cracker Barrel, it was pouring down rain. And then right when we walked out, the sun was gleaming and shining just as when we walked in. So it was just a perfect day. And I just enjoyed it. And I'm happy she was happy. She couldn't stop talking about it on the car ride back. And she was like, oh, I'm so happy we did this. And I took so many pictures, because I love taking pictures just to form those memories and to have them for all time. And I also recorded a few videos of the ducks, and it was just wonderful. Yeah, so I loved it. Well, that concludes this episode of Yarning Over the Days, and I can't believe that this is episode 5. Again, I thank you if you made it this far, and for taking the time out to just hear about my crafting adventures and things that I think about with my crafting, and also just wanted to hear me. Yes, I just want to say thank you. And it's been wonderful. It's always wonderful doing these podcasts, and I look forward to seeing you for the next episode. And I'll see you all later. Bye.